Hey Ali, thanks for joining me here today. How you doing?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing really well, thank you, and thank you so much for being on our show today. I'm super excited to speak with you. We were talking just a minute ago before we hit record, and I'm kind of ashamed to say, but like you are like one of the first females we've had on this podcast, and I feel like we need to do a better job of getting more diversity on this podcast. But I'm just super excited to be talking to you. I would probably consider you a female like thought leader in the fintech sales realm from what I saw on LinkedIn and a lot of the content you create. So I just know it's going to be an awesome conversation. With all that being said, for simple introductions, why don't you just tell everyone kind of who you are and what's the story of Ali?
So Ale is Argentinian American now, 20 years in America, mom, entrepreneur, ex corporate world, and I've been specializing in financial services my whole life. I come from the financial services world, and but always from the business development side and the marketing communication side of things. And now I'm the co-founder of Scalto, which is an agency that we help organizations scale from a branding and communication standpoint. And really happy to be here and be one of your first women here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't we just start there? One of the questions I have for you, and I'd like to kind of dive into in terms of topics, is talk to me about like kind of women in tech and the financial services realm and just women in sales in general. I think you have a really unique background. Obviously, you're from Argentina. You made
Um,
your way here in a different country, and then you're a female in a pretty male dominated industry in financial services, and then obviously you have a role in sales. What's that journey kind of been like? Like, what was your breakthrough?
well, it is a challenge as you grow, you get more confident. Um, I'm not saying it's how can I put it? In Latin America, of course, it's even harder. The US is a little more open in terms of diversity. Financial services plus Latin America plus technology, yes, you won't find many women and you will be mansplained a lot.
Sure.
Um, at first, I did take it personally, but as you make your way through, you understand that you have to just let it go. I honestly, I don't, I don't pick any fights, but you just make your space and don't let anything get in the way of that, and you just show what you know and try to connect with people beyond whoever they are, wherever they come from, or if they're male or women. Yes, it is harder when you are surrounded by men. It is harder to ignore um, everything that happens in conversations among men sometimes, and that's a challenge. But I learned to actually laugh it off and say, "Hey, I'm here. Um, let's be a little more considerate," or things like that, because that happens a lot. And also, a lot of us women in financial services, what happens is that they will put you in a role, or they'll fix your role to, okay, you're the marketing girl, or let's put you in the events, or and little by little I did make space into talking the same language as a CEO, which is what I actually specialize in, right? I know the business inside out, for a fintech or for a financial services, for a wealth manager, for everybody. I know what they're doing and I know their challenges. So it's just a matter of elevating the conversation and making sure you're um, providing some value. And once they see that, they forget whatever, who they have in front of them, and say, okay, what can you add? What value can you add to my business? which is what I always focus on. When we're talking sales, when we are talking marketing, the idea is that you have to focus on what value you can bring to the organization to power up the business strategy they are developing. Whatever the CEO has in mind, wherever they want to go, each area has to have that mentality, right? You want to make sure that every area in your organization is behind your objective and contributes to it. So whenever you are facing a leader and you are being, put into a box, my main recommendation is just remind them what their goal is, or ask them what their goal is, and tell them how you can contribute to it. And then they'll take you out of that box, consider you into the conversation.
I like that, and I think that's really well put. It sounds like you really had to like hone in on a lot of leadership skills early on, and just clear communication skills early on. What would you? I'm just curious. Like, what would you give one piece of advice for like a young woman entrepreneur, young woman leader, kind of venturing into the B2B sales world, or any kind of male dominated industry? What's one piece of advice you'd give to like that 21-year-old up and coming female leader?
Don't let them talk down on you. There's always something that you can contribute. It's very common to find, a table full of men, and you say something and they say okay, and then another person, a man, will repeat it and they'll say, oh, that's a great idea. That's very common. At least it used to be when I was younger. I think that trying to identify firstly who is going to respect you, because there are a ton of men out there. I had a great mentor, CEO, that was a great mentor to me, and I could really feel like he was respecting me and really absorb from them what you can do and ask them what you can do. That's one. And the other one is, don't, be confident. There's a value that we have in Scalto that we call it humbly confident. Know what you know and know what you don't, and make sure you state what you know and ask what you don't. I also was a journalist, so in my conversations are always about asking questions and questions and questions, and through questions you can show a lot and you can learn and teach a lot.
I love that. Know what you know and know what you don't. Really well said, and I think that's awesome that that's kind of like a core saying within your company. I was told early on some of the best advice you can say in business is, "Hey, listen, I'll get back to you." Like
Right.
I'll get back to you on that. And there is something, especially now in the world of social media and content creation and just us putting ourselves out there, staying in your lane and really not having to be an expert or a know-it-all in everything. And that kind of actually brings me to my next question. You have a really strong personal brand, Ali, and I saw like it looks like you are a contributor of content, I believe, on Forbes. Don't quote me on that. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But I saw this content you were putting out there, and I was just really kind of curious. How have you leveraged your personal brand to kind of benefit you throughout your whole kind of like entrepreneurial journey?
Well, you were asking me before we just hit record, what is it that you want out of this? And I think that more and more, since all of these content marketing strategies started and all of the social media profiles, just be authentic and share your knowledge. That's all I do. And that has resulted not into direct sales. I'm not looking for direct sales. My sales are they are a consultative process. We have our process, but it's not about direct lead generation. But what happens that whenever I get to the table, I have a little more credibility in front of a person.
Hmm.
So I remember, and this is going to tell my age, I remember sitting with the CEO that asked me, oh, what do you mean? What's a CEO? Or, why do I need, even like, I remember he asking me, why do I need a website? I was like, okay, you need something that people see before you get to the table that represents you in a good way. And that saves you time in building rapport and building trust. So whatever you do, think about that. You're building rapport and trust before you sit on the table or in the next call with your prospect.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about the know, like, trust strategy in sales. People have to know who you are, they have to like you, and then they trust you for business to happen. I
Right.
really view it no differently when it comes to your personal brand. And one of my most popular pieces of content is people buy from people. Rarely do they actually buy from companies, especially when it's high level B2B sales. And we had a guy on the show named Ruben Alvarez, and he said something really interesting. He has a strong personal brand. He goes, my personal brand helps me get deals done faster. Like, so it's just like, kind of like you just said, when you're at the table, there's a new level of credibility. And it's just a common theme I see amongst like the leaders I have on the show, like yourself. Like, there's strong personal brands to back that. And there's value, there's knowledge, there's all of that you guys are putting out into the world. And in return, people perceive you a certain way.
Yeah, let me add something to that. I know it intimidates a lot of people. It is really intimidating to create content.
Mhm.
So what I really recommend all the time is find a format in which you feel comfortable. In my case, like when I started my own podcast, I said, where is it that I'm comfortable? I'm comfortable in one-on-one conversations. I honestly, let me tell you a secret that's not a secret anymore. I hate networking events. Like I hate going from one person to the other, to the other, to the other. I want to just connect with one person and have fun. So I sort of hacked myself to be in a space in which I'm comfortable. And that's the same for content creation. Do you write? Go ahead and write. Do you like, speaking? Do a podcast. Do you like video? Whatever it is that makes you comfortable. I have my partner, she loves doing doodles. Like she does amazing concepts in graphics. So we're starting to record her
Oh,
explaining
cool.
her graphics, right? So do whatever makes you comfortable and wherever you flow. That's very important to me.
I think that's really well said, and I haven't heard it phrased like that before. Like, just obviously, when we're comfortable, we're more inclined to do. Um, when you first started out, kind of leveraging your personal brand, creating content, I'm sure there's ultimately a little bit of uncomfortability when you start. How did you find that comfort zone? Like, and like, when did you start feeling like, okay, this is a net positive for me right now, creating this content? Like, when did you feel that momentum pick up?
Um, so the first part of the question, my first inclination, this was back when the pandemic started. I started journalism. I always loved journalism. And and years before that, I've always worked with coaches, and the coaches would always ask, when do you flow? When do you
Hmm.
feel that you're having the most fun at work? And I said, well, that's when I'm doing strategy sessions with prospects or clients. When I'm talking to them, challenging them, going back and forward, and it's an interview stuff. So when the pandemic started, I was like everybody else, going nuts. And I said, let me do something that it's not for money. It's not for, it's not to really to look for anything out of it. Just find whatever I like in my job and do it. So that's how I started the podcast. And I said, okay, let me just chat with people. And I did that. And at first, of course, it's uncomfortable. I'm like stiff and asking really hard questions and trying to. then little by little, you go one after the other. And to the second part of the question, when I saw that it benefited, is when in a conversation with a prospect, they say, "Oh, I saw your podcast," or I can, I can say, "Look, in my latest podcast, or in the podcast that I interview somebody in your position, why don't you go take a look at that?" So that's when it really clicked, and it made sense to me.
I think you point out something really well there. Kind of leveraging the content you do end up creating to reference back in your sales process. It's funny you say that. I literally just sent a podcast link on a topic to not even a prospect, but maybe a potential prospect yesterday. And that was kind of unintentional, but being intentional about that can go a long way. And again, builds that credibility, that know, like, trust credibility. I think that's really well said. And again, it's just a trend I keep hearing among salespeople for the last 12 months now, is leveraging that personal brand, and then salespeople are becoming content creators. Talk to me about just B2B sales in the financial services realm. This is where I know, like, this is where your experience is, fintech. And I'm curious how you see the sales process, or how you separate yourself within the sales industry in fintech. The reason I say I'm curious about that is financial services, it's a trust first industry, right? So, and there's so much out there in the fintech world, financial services world. How do you separate yourself when you're selling a service in the financial realm?
So, I think there are a couple of keys. One, I go back to authenticity, try to reach out to, it's to be as human as possible. That's one. Two, marketing and sales, I consider them processes. I always say marketing is much more boring than people think, because it's about a process and continuing the follow-up and and making sure that you have a good setup CRM, a good follow-up system, good content to share for follow-ups, etc. And a lot of self-discipline. The best salespeople I've seen in B2B, they're just disciplined. They're really good about following up, about having the right information about people, about making, checking their background and going back and saying, "Hey, I know I can add value this way or that way." Regarding fintech, a ton of fintech I've seen, they end up going too much into the software sales realm of selling. And sometimes it's a little extreme, and you want to make it a little more consultative. So I know a fintech, of course, you want to do it as massive as possible, and if possible, even like self-service. But in the B2B realm, you need to find exactly what makes that person click. And actually, I just thought one of the exercises we do with our clients is we try to find exactly what reasons for engagement your target has with you, your stakeholders. So generally we prioritize 1, 2, or 3 profiles, not more than 3 profiles, and work on defining what are the rational reasons to engage, but also what are the emotional reasons to engage. And those are harder, but those are the ones that drive purchase.
Absolutely. I love that.
You always have those. And like, even when you do your landing pages, make sure that your main call to action, the top of your page is your emotional reason to engage, not your rational one. Because that's a very common thing with financial services and fintech.
How do you find those kind of key factors, those emotional reasons to engage? How do you kind of like uncover that?
You need to see it in, get really into the, the position of your stakeholder, where do they stand? And The other day, we were even doing it with a client that's actually not in financial services. They're in cybersecurity. And they said, yeah, well, basically, it's very easy. It's fear. And we uncovered, yeah, most of their competition works with fear. Yeah, they're gonna, your business is gonna come down with any attack. That's the easy way. But we said, okay, why don't differentiate from the competition and say, no, let's not talk about fear. Let's talk about the upside. Let's talk about how we can make your company grow through a good cybersecurity structure protection. And then what are the emotional reasons why a CTO will hire them? It's more in the realms of, okay, I need to protect my company, but also it's a matter of ego. So you get deeper into that and say, hey, yeah, no, I'm the Superman here. Let me show you. I'm protecting everybody here. So in finance is similar too. If a lot, we talk about protection, everybody talks about protection and growth and da. So it gets tiring, right? So you wanna find something that is more specific. We do a lot of work on productizing and making niche offerings. That's very important too. You mentioned that before. It's like you have to find your niche, and when you find your niche and the specific product for your niche, the sale is so much easier. So
Agree.
much.
Agreed. They say, I think the old adage is true: the more niche, the more rich. And I know
Yeah.
it sounds cheesy, but man, it's been true. I used to sell everything to everyone, and now we have a very specific target, and we even have a target within that target. And it's been, what did that allow us to do? It allowed us clarity, which is a competitive advantage, and then we're so valuable to that target, we tripled our prices to what I used to be able to charge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what happens when you're very
If
specific.
you productize your offer, then it's that much more.
Exactly. Exactly. This is incredible stuff here today, Ali. I always like to end my show one specific way. I have a white box and a black box. Random questions. I've never read them before. Anything can come out of these boxes.
Okay.
What we ask our guests to choose a box, and we ask you a random question, and that's how we end the show. So I'll ask you white box or black box.
Let's do with the black.
Okay. I promise you, 80% of my guests pick the black box. But the tougher questions are
For
here.
some reason.
All right. Which talent, Ali, would you most like to have?
Which kind of what?
What
Talent?
talent? Yeah, if you could have any
Oh,
talent in the
talent.
world, yeah, what would you like to have?
I would love to be able to sing. I'm a horrible singer. I don't even sing in the shower because I'm so bad.
you, singing is definitely a special talent. So we won't ask you to sing. I won't ask you to sing, I should say. So
Good.
that would be an awesome talent to have. Ali, thank you so much for all the great information today. If people wanted to kind of find you and follow you, we'll link everything in the show notes. Where can people learn more about you, Ali, and like learn more about Scalto, your company? Go ahead and plug it here, and we'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, go ahead and visit scalto.com or email me at alejandras@scalto.com.
Awesome.
And we'll, set up a quick intro.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely encourage anyone listening to take her up on that. And then follow Ali on LinkedIn, which we will also link on the show notes here below. So, Alejandra, Ali, thank you so much for joining the show today. And would love to maybe have you back for a second episode and get a little bit more specific on your consulting process. I think how your connection and what you bring to your clients would be really interesting to learn more about. But thank you so much for your time today.
Would love to be back. It was a ton of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.